A week before my wedding, my family told me that my sister got pregnant by my fiancé and that they would be getting married, so I should step out of their lives. I cut off my family for 2 years, but then my mom appeared at my door with a kid asking me to show mercy to my unfortunate sister and take care of it because it's my blood after all. For context, I had been with my ex Rob for 3 years when we got engaged and when he decided to start cheating on me with my sister. My sister Nora is 2 years younger than me and was always a jealous brat in whatever I wanted. She always wanted the exact same thing, and most of the time, she got her way. Our parents would totally coddle her the entire time she was growing up, and I guess that's why she grew up to be a spoiled, entitled, and insecure brat. It didn't bother me that she always got her way. It also got on my nerves that she was a huge copycat, and then she would pretend like I was the one copying her. Whenever we even thought about these things, my parents would intervene and ask me to let it go since these were petty things and I needed to be the bigger person. But honestly, I was sick of being the bigger person all the time just because I was older. And eventually my relationship with my sister became really bitter, and I was glad to leave for college because that meant that I wouldn't have to stay in the same house as them anymore. And college is where I met Rob, and we became friends. He was the one who asked me out after almost 2 years of crushing on each other, but never making a move because we were too scared to ruin our friendship. But I guess around the time we graduated, he worked up the nerve to finally do it, and I said yes to going out with him, which was probably the biggest mistake of my life because after dating for 3 years, he decided to ask me to marry him, and once again I said yes. We had already met each other's families by then, but because I was not very close to my family, he had only met my folks a handful of time. However, after we got engaged, there were a lot of instances where he met my family, more included Nora. I never really suspected anything, because when the two of us were together, Rob never gave me a reason to doubt him. He seemed pretty head over heels in love with me, and I loved him. So for me to even think that he would end up cheating on me with Nora, it seemed too unlikely to happen. Now, looking back on it, I guess he was just a really good actor and did a fantastic job of convincing me that nothing was going on, when in fact he and Nora had started flirting behind my back a couple of weeks after we got engaged. Of course, Nora had been the one to initiate it. I know that for a fact because she had confessed to it. And Rob had held back for about a month or so before he finally started responding to her advances. Unfortunately, by the time I even found out about any of this, there was just 1 week left to go for my wedding. The only reason they had even decided to tell me that they had started having an affair was because Nora had managed to get herself knocked up by Rob. And by the time they told me about it, she was already 9 weeks along. Pretty much everybody knew about it before I did, which is why they had called for a family meeting a week before my wedding. And I had actually expected it to be a surprise for me or something. But I had left this so-called meeting in tears that day, and 2 years have passed since then, but it's still the worst day of my life. My parents were there, Rob's parents were there, and of course Rob and Nora were also there. They sat me down, and the two of them told me that a couple of weeks after my engagement, Nora had reached out to Rob and started flirting with him. And he hadn't responded at first, but slowly he started warming up to her because she was funny and kind of cute. They figured that it was just a bit of harmless flirting, and at first they were just joking around, so it seemed like banter, but before they even knew it, they had started falling for each other. Nora told me that she had only started flirting with him because she felt like messing with me, but apparently, according to her claims, she did not have any actual intention of ruining our relationship or falling in love with my fiancé. And as for Rob, his excuse was that he had just started thinking about life after marriage, and this was his way of relieving the stress that he was feeling about the upcoming wedding and stuff. Both of them had pretty lame excuses, and I definitely didn't believe what Nora was saying about her not having any intentions of ruining anything for me, and that the affair had just happened out of the blue. The bottom line was that my fiancé had cheated on me with my sister, and now Nora was pregnant with my baby. Not just that, they were apparently also in love with each other and wanted to marry each other, which is why they had told their parents, and the family meeting had been called so that I could be informed. Everything had already been decided. They had just wanted to let me know about it. And it's not like I could do anything about the situation at that point, so I just had to deal with it. The families had been told the truth about a week before me, 2 weeks after Nora and Rob found out that she was pregnant. And all of them had discussed the way to go about this in the future, and had come to the conclusion that I just had to deal with it because obviously Rob couldn't marry me anymore. They started to apologize to me, but that was when I decided that I had had enough. And until then, I had just been sitting quietly because I was in disbelief of what I was hearing. But when I realized that they were all telling me the truth, and this was actually happening, I lost it, and I started screaming at everyone. I was really frustrated, hurt, and confused, and it all just came out at once. Most of all, I was upset with Rob and Nora because they were the main culprits here. After that day, when everything fell apart, I completely isolated myself. I lost my job, my friends didn't know how to handle me anymore, and honestly, I didn't care about staying in touch with anyone. I spent 2 years slowly rebuilding myself, trying to piece my life back together, far away from anything that reminded me of Rob, Nora, or my parents. I started therapy, focused on myself again, and started building a new life. Then, one random morning, my mother showed up at my door, holding a child around 1.5 years old, asking me to help take care of her because Nora was struggling. Apparently, the great love story that Nora and Rob believed they had didn't withstand the reality of raising a child and building a life together. Rob bailed out a few months after the baby was born, running away from his responsibilities as a father and leaving Nora alone. Of course, my parents did everything they could to support her, but the truth is that my spoiled sister had no clue how to take care of a child, let alone support herself without relying on others. My mother, in her usual way, tried to manipulate my emotions, saying that Nora was sorry and that the child wasn't at fault. She expected me to show mercy, to accept a role they had decided for me 2 years ago, without even consulting me. "It's your blood, sweetheart," she kept repeating, her voice breaking as she held the child. "You need to help. Think about Nora. She's desperate." I looked at that scene with a mix of disbelief and anger. My mother stood there, trying to shove all the responsibility for the situation onto my shoulders, as if I were the only solution to the problems Nora had created herself. As if it was my duty to take in a child that, to me, symbolized betrayal and abandonment. And at that moment, all the resentment I had been holding onto for years came out. I looked my mother straight in the eye and let out everything that had been stuck in my throat. "You expect me to help? After everything you all did to me? You literally pushed me out of your lives so Nora could have what she wanted. You chose her side. And now, because her life isn't the fairy tale she expected, you think I should fix everything? Don't you have any shame?" My mother, shocked by my reaction, tried to speak, but I didn't let her. I continued, not giving her a chance to defend herself. "You made your choices, now deal with them. I tried to move on and rebuild my life, and you only showed up now because you realized I don't need you anymore. I'm not going to help. I'm not going to take care of her kid. He's not my problem. And by the way, tell Nora that if she wants to be a mother, it's time to grow up and take responsibility. And if she can't, she should go after Rob, since they loved each other so much." My mother started to cry, but to me, those tears meant nothing. It was the same drama I had seen my entire life whenever things didn't go the way she wanted. She mumbled something about me being cruel, but honestly, I didn't care what she thought of me anymore. I shut the door in her face without looking back and let her deal with her own pain, just as I had to deal with mine. In the days that followed, I heard from acquaintances that Nora was spiraling even more. Rob, on the other hand, had moved to another city, living a completely new life and, according to rumors, was already in another relationship, completely ignoring the existence of his own child. Nora, not knowing how to handle Rob's rejection and the fact that I wasn't willing to be her lifeline, ended up moving back in with my parents, where she continued to be the center of attention, but now with a load of problems she never knew how to deal with. One day, while I was leaving work, I ran into an old friend who also knew Rob. She told me, unfiltered, that he had lost his job and that his new relationship wasn't going well either. I heard that he kept complaining about how difficult life was and how women only brought him trouble, without realizing that he himself was the main cause of all his misfortunes. It seemed like life was finally catching up with him. Nora, meanwhile, kept complaining about how things weren't fair, never admitting that she had dug her own grave. I heard that she started making videos online, trying to sell an image of overcoming struggles, as if life had been cruel to her for no reason, conveniently omitting the whole story of her affair with Rob and how they both betrayed my trust. That made me laugh, but it also left a bitter taste, because I knew that, one way or another, she continued to live in a world of illusions. But me? I felt free for the first time in a long while. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of my family's expectations, or the burden of being the oldest and the bigger person. I focused on living my life the way I wanted, without looking back. I adopted a dog, made new friends, got back into painting, and started planning a trip around the world, something I had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to do. And even though I still felt anger and pain over everything that had happened, I also felt something I never thought I would. Relief. Relief for finally having stopped being Nora's shadow, and for having found my own path. It wasn't a happy ending in the traditional sense, but for me, it was the best kind of revenge. Living well while they drowned in the consequences of their own actions. After refusing to help my mom with Nora's situation, I threw myself into my plans and dreams that had been postponed for so long. Over time, my passion for painting, which had once been just a simple hobby, began to flourish in ways I never thought possible. I opened a small online gallery to showcase my work, and to my surprise, sales began to grow quickly. Gradually, what had been a personal therapy turned into a solid source of income. Recognition began to follow, and my art started being displayed in a few local galleries. With this success, I finally managed to fulfill my dream of traveling the world. First, I went to Paris, the city of artists, where I spent weeks getting inspired by the streets and museums, living the life I had always wanted. Then, I moved on to Tuscany, where I rented a small house in the countryside for a few months, painting landscapes and exploring what each new town had to offer. It was a life I never thought possible for myself, especially after everything that had happened with Rob and Nora. Meanwhile, their lives continued to fall apart. I kept minimal contact with a few people from my old town, so every now and then, stories about Rob and Nora reached me. Apparently, Rob couldn't keep a job for long and was sinking deeper into debt. Nora, on the other hand, was still living with my parents, complaining about the lack of opportunities and how unfair life had been to her. She tried to pick up some temporary jobs, but nothing seemed to stick. Between complaints on social media, she tried to present herself as overcoming the hardships, but those who knew her well saw right through the facade. And then, the moment came when they started asking me for money. First, it was my mother, trying to be subtle, mentioning how tough things were at home and how any help would be greatly appreciated. Then, Nora began messaging me directly, saying that she regretted what she had done and just needed a little help to get her life back on track. Rob even reached out, albeit more subtly, sending an unexpected message saying he wanted to talk and resolve things from the past. I knew these attempts were more about their interest in my money than any genuine desire for redemption or reconnection. They never truly cared about how I felt when everything happened. And now that they were struggling, suddenly I was their easy solution. But I wasn't the same person I used to be, the one who always put others' needs above her own, who gave in to their requests. That version of me that they had known was long gone, left behind along with the days when I cried because of them. So instead of letting myself be dragged back into their new attempts at manipulation, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I blocked them all. My mother, Nora, even Rob. I cut the last thread that still connected me to them. It was an act that brought me immediate relief, a sense of freedom that I had never experienced before. It was as if, finally, I had stepped out of their shadow, living entirely for myself. My life continued to thrive. I kept traveling and exploring new places, always with my loyal dog by my side, who became my companion on all my adventures. My paintings gained even more recognition, and my online gallery started attracting international buyers. With every new destination I visited, I felt increasingly distanced from that painful past. And while I discovered new cultures, made friends from different parts of the world, and reconnected with myself, I heard through a mutual friend that Nora and Rob were more lost than ever. I was told that my parents could no longer afford to support Nora, and that Rob was facing legal issues due to his debts. They were trapped in a never-ending cycle of struggles, growing more desperate each day. And ironically, I realized that even with all the pain they had caused me, they had never learned how to deal with the consequences of their own choices. The difference now was that I was too far away to care. My life was moving forward, and I was determined to enjoy every minute of this new chapter. I learned not to feel pity for those who choose their own path, even when it means they'll have to face their own downfalls. And the truth was that, after so much heartache, it was liberating to know that I was finally the only one responsible for my destiny, and that their choices no longer had any impact on me. So I allowed myself to smile. Smile at the mornings when I woke up with the sun shining through the window of a new city, smile while painting in a cafe along a canal in Amsterdam, and smile at the thought that, of all the possible versions of my life, I had chosen the happiest one for myself. And as for Nora, Rob, and everyone who tried to bring me down, they were left behind, exactly where they deserved to be, in the past. Years after that tumultuous period, my life took an even bigger turn. During one of my travels around the world, I met someone special. His name was Daniel, and we met by chance at an art exhibition in Lisbon. He was an architect passionate about his work, and our conversations flowed as if we had known each other for years. What started as a friendship between two souls who loved art and architecture quickly turned into something deeper. Daniel not only supported my artistic journey, but also helped me believe in love again. He respected my past and never tried to rush or pressure me into anything I wasn't ready for. Instead, he walked by my side, patient and steady, and little by little, I found myself falling for him again. So, when he proposed to me on a small beach at sunset, I said yes, without hesitation. We got married in an intimate ceremony, surrounded only by a few close friends and new people who had become my family over the years. I didn't invite anyone from my past. That moment was just for me and Daniel, free of any old burdens. On that day, I felt like I had finally found the peace I had been seeking, and with him, I started a new chapter in my life, a chapter that was entirely my own, far away from the shadows of Nora, Rob, and even my parents. As I moved on, I heard through acquaintances that Rob and Nora hadn't been so lucky. That great romance that started with betrayal crumbled shortly after I cut ties with them. The daily grind, combined with the pressure of raising a child and unmet expectations, quickly shattered the illusion of happiness they had built. Rob, unable to handle the difficulties and responsibilities of parenthood, left Nora and the child behind, trying to start over somewhere else. But things didn't go as planned for him. Without a steady job and with mounting debts, Rob found himself in serious trouble. And Nora, who had always relied on others to solve her problems, found herself completely alone. Desperate to make ends meet for herself and her child, she decided to sue Rob for child support. The lawsuit dragged on for months, and the few mutual friends I still had kept me updated on the details, which sounded like something out of a soap opera. The court eventually ruled in Nora's favor, and Rob was ordered to pay child support. This only made him angrier, as he had always blamed Nora for everything that went wrong in his life. Ironically, he even tried to appeal to the court, asking for a reduction in payments, claiming that his financial situation was unsustainable. The two of them were further entangled in legal battles, throwing accusations at each other and blaming one another for the collapse of everything. Every time I heard about the unfolding chaos, I didn't feel any pity. On the contrary, there was a sense of relief, almost a confirmation that, in the end, life has a way of giving everyone what they deserve. I didn't have to seek revenge or fight to expose their lies or demand justice. Life did that for me, slowly and painfully for them, but for me, it served as a reminder that some people simply reap what they sow. While Rob struggled to stay out of trouble and Nora tried to survive the reality she'd created, I was living a life I could have never imagined even in my best dreams. Daniel and I bought a house in a small coastal town where I opened my own art studio, and he set up his architecture firm. We spent our mornings together, walking along the beach with our dog, while I felt lighter than ever. One day, while we were sitting on our porch, watching the sunset, Daniel held my hand and said he wanted to start a family. I, who once thought I'd never love or believe in a life like this again, felt an immense joy in being able to say that yes, I wanted that too. There, surrounded by peace and the love we had built, I realized that my happiness was the greatest proof that I had won, that the pain I had endured had turned into strength and a better life. As for Nora and Rob, they remained trapped in a cycle they chose for themselves, stuck with the consequences of their actions. And in a way, the best revenge I could have was just this: my complete happiness, while they dealt with their own miseries. After all, life has a peculiar way of setting things right, even if it takes time. And with every new day I woke up next to Daniel, I knew I had made the best choice: to move on without looking back.